Beloved Saints, today's 5-minute message of redemptive history is about Jacob, Part 1, from the third book of Redemptive History series, The Unquenchable Lamp of the Covenant. Jacob was the son born to Isaac, his father, at the age of 60. Jacob was also the younger twin brother of Esau. Since Jacob was the younger son, his name shouldn't have been recorded in the genealogy of Jesus because that genealogy only records the firstborn. However, Jacob received the birthright and the blessing of the firstborn, so his name is recorded in the genealogy of Jesus. At this time, let us examine the process of how Jacob obtained the blessing of the firstborn and share God's grace together. First, Jacob dwelt in tents and received instructions in the faith. In Genesis 25 verse 27 it says, "So the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a complete man dwelling in tents." In the tent that Jacob lived in, there was also his grandfather Abraham and Isaac his father. So there were 3 generations of faith living together in that tent. In Hebrews 11 verse 9 it says, "By faith Abraham made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise." When we calculate the years, Abraham became the father of Isaac at age 100. Isaac became the father of Jacob at age 60. So when Jacob was born, Abraham was 160 years old. Abraham lived 175 years total on this earth. This means that for 15 years, Abraham, his grandfather, Isaac, his father, and Jacob lived together in the same tent. So the 3 generations of faith lived in the tent. And we can see this when we calculate by subtracting 175 minus 160. So during this 15 years, grandfather Abraham must have given detailed instruction in the faith to Isaac, his son, and to Jacob, his grandson. Abraham must have especially educated Jacob by saying to him, "Jacob, our ancestor Adam had Cain and Abel." Physically, Cain was the firstborn and Abel was the second son. However, spiritually, Cain was not the firstborn because he belonged to the wicked one and killed his younger brother Abel. The true firstborn was Abel, who offered sacrifice to God in faith. So Jacob, you need to become like Abel and offer sacrifices to God in faith. You must keep the word of God's covenant so that you can become the firstborn by faith. Abraham must have wanted both of his grandsons, Esau and Jacob, to be the firstborns of faith. However, even though Esau was the firstborn physically, he despised his birthright. And even though Jacob was the secondborn, he yearned to attain the birthright of the firstborn. So he took away the birthright and the blessing of the firstborn from Esau. Jacob received detailed instruction in the faith from his grandfather Abraham in the tents. This led to Jacob yearning for the birthright of the firstborn. And finally, he also was able to receive the blessing of the firstborn as well. Second, Jacob received the blessing of the firstborn by God's sovereign election. Everyone, Jacob bought the birthright of the firstborn from Esau by exchanging it with lentil stew. Also, Jacob deceived his older brother Esau and his father Isaac in order to take away that blessing of the firstborn. These events may appear to be the result of Jacob's ambition. However, God's sovereign election and administration in the history of redemption was behind it all to establish Jacob as the direct ancestor of Jesus Christ. We know this because the 12 sons of Jacob became ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel, thus becoming the foundation for the establishment of the nation of Israel. Beloved saints, in Romans chapter 9, verse 16, Apostle Paul testifies about this incident of Jacob, the second son, becoming the firstborn. It says, "It does not, therefore, depend on human desire or effort, but on God's mercy." This clearly proves that the election of Jacob was by God's sovereignty. Everyone, we who have received Jesus Christ into our hearts, let us believe that we have also been elected by God's sovereignty, like Jacob. When we also yearn for the blessing of the firstborn, like Jacob, God will definitely grant us that blessing. I bless in the name of the Lord.